I am so excited to be here with Kirsten Stendevad and talk about how you can step up as a leader, as a lighthouse leader in times of crisis. Welcome to the show, Kirsten.
Thank you so much. I'm so honored to be here.
So it's interesting how Kirsten and I met. It was shortly before a launch, one of our Samba launches. And one of my team members said, "Hey, I think I know someone who could be a potential affiliate." And then literally a few days before the webinar, or was it even the day before? Like it was really last minute. Normally we wouldn't do it, but we felt that our audience were very much aligned. So you interviewed me on your Facebook page, and that was kind of a start of our friendship.
Yes, it was so much fun. And my audience was so pleased to get to meet this Nordic. I introduced you as this James Bond of entrepreneurship, and they thought that was very exciting.
Well, that was wonderful start. It's a little bit, similar to just how I create new projects. I was just actually admiring one of my clients yesterday because he is going very slowly into a new project. And I said, that's great because that project deserves it. But I often create something like fast and messy. It's almost like my mantra. So that's how we met, fast and messy.
Yes.
And now
But
we're
that's
catching
the,
up. Yeah.
yeah, but I think that sometimes you just have to surf a wave when it's there.
Yes, that's exactly it. And that's why we're talking here again today. We are still in the middle of the crisis. People have adjusted a bit to a new normal, but we're not out of the weaves yet. And it's unsure how long that will all take. And this is really a time for some true leadership. But before we dive into that, Kirsten, we want to look a little bit at your background. Like, where do you come from and what did you do before you started to help people work on their leadership?
Well, I come from Copenhagen, Denmark, but I have spent most of my life or half of my life outside of Denmark in international environments. In Brussels, I lived 10 years in New York City, reporting to Scandinavian media about how to have it all, how to create businesses and lives where there wasn't such a high price. I was really looking at who's able to create a good deal for everybody involved. So I was reporting those kind of stories. And when I came back to Denmark, I started writing books and giving talks in corporations about it. And then I was very interested in the feminine. So I created a goddess school. And that's not a sect. Some people thought, are you creating a new religion? No, I was just curious. I was looking for role models for feminine power. And as I couldn't find many in corporations and in society, I went back to the archetypes, the archetypal goddesses, from Greece, from India. We have a lot of goddesses in history, so in mythology, and we worked at the goddess school on exploring all these archetypes and what would the result be if we put the feminine foot first. So it was sort of the upside. We went like upside, like Fifi Longstocking, like turning the world upside down, and discovered that when women put pleasure first, when they focus on lifting each other, when they really employ their feminine skills, they can go so much faster with so much more pleasure and so much less work. So we really discovered that it's possible to achieve much more with much less when you use the feminine power appropriately in an appropriate balance with the masculine. And then I discovered that women, when they really took on their feminine power, they got immensely creative, and also their intuition got so sharp that they really were able to download ideas that were in alignment with the zeitgeist. So then I had to create an entrepreneurial school, which I call the Millionaire School, where the purpose was to achieve more with less, so more money in less time, so that we could enjoy our families and our, everything else at the same time. And then, so then I was very much into that. And then I had a big crisis in my life myself. So I was at the height of my success. I had just launched internationally. I had women from all over the world come to Copenhagen to participate in my feminine leadership trainings. And everything was going so well. And then I had a very surprising experience that my 6-year-old son experienced symptoms just for a week. It's a very short time, but enough for me to take him to the hospital. And the hospital, they discovered that he had a tumor going out from the left side of his neuron, and that kind of cancer that he had was not only highly aggressive, but also incurable. So my life, that afternoon where we discovered that, it was December 23rd, really, really turned upside down, or just the scenery completely changed. It was like sitting in a theater, and then suddenly, the floor rolls, everything rolls, and it's a completely new world.
When was that?
Well, that was in December 11, and I spent the next 6 months.
What year?
11. So that was in December 11, and I spent the next 6 months really running a marathon in sprint to save his life. And I actually managed to cure his incurable cancer. But the Danish hospital did not believe that it was possible to cure his incurable cancer. So they didn't want to help us with the side effects from the treatment. And so he died. The day after I thought he was cured. I was celebrating on Sunday that we managed to cure him and that everything was no sign of cancer anymore. The tumor had shrunk. The only problem was that there was only a small problem left that has nothing to do with the cancer, but with the treatment. And the day after he dies. But the night he died, and that's what leads me to leadership. The night he died, I could see I had two options. So if I followed the natural law of gravity, I would go down the drain, and I would take my family with me, my business, all my clients with me. And I thought that's not a perspective that I particularly enjoy. And I also thought it's too early for my other children to lose hope in life. I want them to believe in a happy ending. So, and I thought, well, they deserve a happy mother. And one son is in paradise. The two other sons need to be there too. The rest of us need to be in paradise too. So I took an important decision, and I think this decision is really something I think about a lot these days with the corona crisis. I took one decision, and that was to go up instead of down. So it was very irrational because I didn't know how to do it. But I just decided I'm going to go up instead of down. So my motto became, why go down when you can go up? And that decision, I must admit, has really opened a whole new world for me, because the ideas, inspirations, the context, everything that unfolded from there was a beautiful journey. I mean, it has been extremely painful. I'm not going to neglect that. Losing a child is so painful. I mean, I don't wish it upon anyone. Sometimes when I feel the pain, it's like, I'm thinking, if people knew how much this hurts. But I have learned to live with the pain in the sense that when it comes, I welcome it as a reminder how much I love my son, and how beautiful it is that love is eternal. And then I have learned to be with it in such a manner that it doesn't paralyze me, but it has widened my perspectives. It has deepened my perspectives. I've gotten so much more tones in the heart. So it has actually opened a lot, and that has really been an immense gift to discover that when you decide to go up instead of down, there are ways to do it so that you actually become bigger, and life becomes even more meaningful. And I must admit, I have never been better in the sense, not that I wish that I think it's a gift that he died, but I'm surprised what's possible for us humans.
Yes.
That even if we experience big tragedy, we don't have to go down. We're designed to do this. We can go up instead of down. And to answer your question, my business, I could not have the same messages as before, achieve more with less. It's like too lightheaded. So I spent I spent 3 months in what I call the fertile void, and that is like everything was gone. It was my ground zero. So I didn't know what to believe in. I didn't know what to teach. My clients actually fled from my business because it was too. They couldn't believe I could continue, but I had to. I'm an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I had to continue. I mean, I had to just spend all my money trying to save my son's life, and there's not an option for me to go on welfare. It's like that didn't even enter my mind. I just knew something great can come out of this. I just need to listen. So after 3 months, it came to me, why don't I write the book that I've wanted to write all along, like the argument for the power of yin. And then I asked the most prestigious Danish business publisher, because I really wanted that credibility from like a really hardcore business publisher. I asked them if they wanted the book, and they said, we haven't taken a book about this topic in 10 years, but we'll take that one. And so then that gave me like a rope to hold on to while I was walking up my mountain. And so I wrote the book called The Future is Feminine. And it yet exists in Scandinavian languages only, but it's on its way in English. It's going to come out in January 2021. And it's about the 7 dimensions of 21st century leadership that will take you and your business from great to extraordinary. And so that book talks about leadership and leading from the feminine, leadership based on the feminine model, which is a model where it's not power over, but power to lift. And I believe that's the new power that we all, regardless of gender, need to embrace now.
So this all happened in 2011. You wrote the book. When did it come out first?
Well, my son died in 12. And then I had a few years where I was working on the book and healing my business, healing my children, healing my husband, healing my family, healing myself. So I've had 7 years uphill where I've just, I'm very proud. My business kept going. I kept inventing new brands that were in alignment where I was heading. And the book came out in October 16. And since I've been teaching leadership training, I've been doing leadership training here in Denmark, and now I'm taking that internationally because I really think that the time is now. It really needs to happen now. A new kind of leadership, a new that is in alignment with the new rules of the game. Because let's face it, the game has changed. We can no longer lead with the rules of the 20th century. That is long gone, and the corona crisis is just a crack, an opening, a pause, a window that allows us to shift gears and to get in alignment with the new rules of the game. So in that sense, this crisis it can be viewed as a blessing. Of course, I mean, I really feel for the people who get ill and who die, and that's terrible. But I believe in any kind of change, there are also sacrifices. And this is a big change. And maybe this is the change we've all been waiting for. Or maybe this is the only way it could happen, like a big halt, big pause, big fertile void, and then reflection and new action in alignment with the new rules of the game.
Because leadership is not often discussed on this podcast, although we use it every day. How do you define leadership? What does it mean to you?
It's not leadership in the formal sense of somebody giving you a business card where it says you are now the leader of this and this. I believe that's the old-fashioned leadership. Leadership for me is about looking around in the landscape and spotting a need that is unfulfilled, and then stepping in and fulfilling that need if you feel called to do so. So you fulfill a need that other people don't fulfill in that particular way. I fulfill a need that other people don't fulfill in that particular way. I always wrote the books that I missed on the shelves. I always recreated the courses that I wanted to attend. And that is for me leadership. So it's creating what you think is missing, what you think that there's a need for this. I can feel a need for this and it's unfulfilled. Let me create it. So entrepreneurs are great leaders of the new. I love entrepreneurship because entrepreneurship is creativity. It's creating the new reality.
Mm.
And so I find that entrepreneurship is the new politics. Business is the new politics. We cannot wait for politicians. I mean, they're so busy discussing this, that, and the other, and their next election, and so on. While they're doing that, we are creating the new reality, much faster and much more efficient. And
Yeah.
we can shape it in alignment with our values, which is the beautiful thing.
So, do you think going through such a personal traumatic crisis yourself now, almost 9 years ago, has that helped you prepare for what's going on right now?
Absolutely. I mean, I was very happy that I had spent 10 years teaching leadership before my own crisis. But so when that happened, I felt that my muscles were in very good shape. So it was natural for me to take leadership. It was not an option for me to become a victim. Absolutely not an option. I mean, I didn't even want people to feel sorry for me. I was like, I have, on some level, I think my soul has chosen this, so I can do this. Since I have kept taking leadership, but in a much more, with vulnerability. That was the new thing that came into my life. This humility that you cannot always control circumstances. You cannot always control what's happening to you. I don't believe in this American thing where they say there's nothing you can't be, do, or have, because I believe that we are also a part of the bigger picture. And even though we can shape the future with our creativity and with our talents and our will, there's a certain point where the will stops and life is bigger. So it has created a lot of humility. But I do believe that when a crisis like this comes, I'm like, just roll up the sleeves. This is not scary for me at all. This is just an opportunity, and I'm looking for the opportunities, and then I'm looking for the blessings, and I'm looking for the possibility for upgrades, not only for myself, but for everyone around me and for the world. And I think it's an amazing opportunity. I mean, when the crisis just occurred, my first initial reaction was euphoria. Wow, this is what we've been waiting for. An opportunity to make a huge shift of consciousness. Einstein said we cannot solve a problem on the same level as it was created. Of course not. So this is an opportunity to shift, but we do need to take this opportunity. We do really need to step up now to a different level of consciousness. And that's what I've been spending the past 8 years doing. It's amping up. I mean, you have no idea how much inner work I've done. It's outrageous. I mean, I don't know anybody who's been that extreme. I've looked up near-death experiences to understand. I've traveled here and there and far. I've studied with enlightened masters. I've gone berserk to understand death, to understand how death can be an expansion, to stay connected to my son, to develop my intuition, and also to create a business that really serves, that can really take people higher, faster. And that's what I experience now, that the benefit is that the people in my programs, they transform very fast because they enter a field of consciousness that has already been created and that is already vibrating high. So when they step in, it's like an elevator, just get to that level fast. So that's beautiful. And that means that with the people I had in my leadership training now, they go out and do amazing things. They go out and change the world. They change, if they're in corporate lives, they become change makers inside their corporations. And if they're entrepreneurs, they create amazing new services that the world, that just alters the mindset and the way it alters the consciousness, alters, clears up in the old. Many of them do stuff like clearing up the past, releasing trauma and stuff like that. And many of them create the new way of thinking. So it's beautiful.
So when you talk about stepping up as a leader, not everyone sees themselves as a leader, because also the word leader, and that's why I asked before about leadership, it has a very, very corporate tone to it. And not everyone is still like accepting I'm a leader, or how can I step up as a leader? So you explained it well in terms of being creative. But we've seen leaders emerge in this crisis. We have seen some heads of states being true leaders, showing also the human side versus what's needed of a president, and others just running along like a headless chicken, not willing to take leadership or completely failing. Okay, we're obviously not talking to presidents of, heads of states here in this podcast episode, maybe, but mainly, entrepreneurs, online entrepreneurs. And what can they do? How do you see this happening for the individual who not necessarily sees themselves as a leader?
Well, when I talk about illuminary leadership, I talk about leading from the light within. So it's a very different process than leading because you have a title. And what we see, the big difference with the leaders, we see how they lead crisis today. We can see some people leading from fear, and that's the old leadership, and that's what's obsolete. And you see some people leading from trust, from faith, from love, from compassion, and that's the new kind of leadership. And it is a transition also for entrepreneurs to shift paradigm, because of course as entrepreneurs the first thing that hits us is fear. What's going to happen with our business? I mean, for me it was like, nobody trusted that I could actually lead courses when I just lost my son, and I thought I just became a much better mentor. And of course, in a crisis like this, the first thing that happens is people think, oh, who's going to buy my stuff now? Because now everything is halting. So the first thing that hits is fear. And that's not a problem. Fear is not a problem. It's a stimuli. It's like it's a warning sign. We need to take care. We need to pay attention now. We need to listen closely. But what happens when we get stuck in fear is that we get to take very bad decisions that are fear-based. And that's what we need to be very, take an inner leadership for choosing to trust, choosing to look for the light, choosing to listen to our inner calling, what really wants to happen now. So a crisis like this can be a cause for immense innovation, because if you really listen to what do I really want? Like, my crisis brought me in touch with what I'm really here to do, which is about leadership, a new kind of leadership, and creating communities around leadership with balance between masculine and feminine energies. So it brought me completely on track with my soul purpose. And that's the opportunity we all have now. So for entrepreneurs, I would say there is an immense opportunity to align your business so that you're really aligned with your soul purpose. So that you're really aligned with what you're here to do, not just creating a business with something. That is a very good training. But now get really on track, repurpose so that you're really on track with what the dream you have always longed to do, something that has been calling you for a long time. This is the time to do it, because the time is ready for it. Everything has crumbled anyway. So we need to build the new. So now listen closely and have the courage to act upon what you hear.
So basically you're saying go within and figure out, like you said, this book that you had been longing to write, and you took the opportunity of your personal crisis, of the trauma, to kind of say, okay, life is not getting any longer. Like, if I don't take the action on writing this book now, I may never do it.
Well, what I said was, what can I still believe in? My world had crumbled. What do I still believe in? And I believed in two things. The power of the feminine, because it's the power of the feminine that takes us through a crisis. Yes, action is good, but what really takes us through a crisis is relationships, is network, is other people's support, is the healing, it's the listening, it's getting in touch with the bigger picture. That's what's truly healing. Action is not truly healing. It can produce results, but if you really want to be happy and peaceful on the inside, you need to employ your feminine muscle. So I thought the power of the feminine, and that is actually proven. What takes people through crisis is the power of relationships and listening within. And so the other thing that I still believed in was leadership. because I could see leadership was what gave me a good life before the crisis. Leadership was what gave my son the best time. I mean, the best way of being ill that he could have asked for. He was so well during most of his young time. And leadership was gave him a beautiful death now that he had to die. And leadership was what made my family, myself and my family, go up instead of down from this crisis. So I still believe in leadership, and that's what that is my mantra. But not mindless leadership, leadership from the light within. We have so many resources that we have not used. We have only used our mental resources, but we have an immense power of the heart. We have immense power of the spirit. We have physical intelligence. We have energetic intelligence. We have collective intelligence. When we get together and help each other, we get access to so much more intelligence than we could have had on our own. And now it's the time to use all those resources.
For me, leadership is also about being proactive. What I've seen when I see leaders fail, like the ones that are official leaders, is when there's complacency and reacting versus proacting. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. One of my rules of the game, I have these 7 rules, and one of them is being proactive. To step forward and do what needs to be done, to take responsibility, not to say, well, it's not my fault and I don't know what, and no, take responsibilities. Think, in which way am I 100% responsible for experiencing this, and how can I take some initiatives and be constructive and take initiatives that not only live myself but also the people around me. That for me is leadership. Of course, proactive. I mean, reactivity is a miserable place to be, because you're just like the victim of circumstances or the victim of other people's decisions. And that's the paradigm we came from. That was the hierarchies, the pyramids, where we were just little ants in a big pyramid. No, now it's the opposite. Now all of us have the opportunity to help co-create and reshape and rebuild and innovate, and it's an amazing time, because from the underground, from the floor up, we can actually help create a new reality. So the entrepreneurs are such important ingredients in society right now, and I really urge entrepreneurs to listen closely to what wants to happen. In leadership theory, there's this theory Otto Scharmer, he's talking about, how we sometimes need to let go of all the old and then stand in what I call the fertile void, in the nowhere, in the ground zero, and then listen to the future, not creating from the past, but listen to the future, what wants to happen, and then have the courage to act on that. And that's what creates the new. So we are the pioneers of change.
Yeah. So you talked about having 7 mantras, and you said proactivity was one of them. Now I'm curious, which are the others?
Yes, I have this whole leadership model. It's a diamond, and it's shaped like the diamond. And we start in the East with the most foundational principle, which is balance between the yin and the yang, balance between the 2 foundational essences in the world. So that's the masculine and feminine energies. And I mean, this sounds very banal, but if we understood this, our society wouldn't be as unbalanced as it is. So we need to get back to that balance and really value the masculine and feminine energies equally, and see how there's a synergy between them and how we create that synergy. For entrepreneurs, this is very important, because if we master this, we can create flow instead of working so hard to create results. Then the second principle is about polarity. About making friends with difference between the sexes, and seeing the advantage of the feminine design and the advantage of the masculine design, but also knowing that anybody at all times has access to all archetypes, both all of the masculine and all of the feminine. So a woman who's very feminine can also at any time employ her action gear, or her decisiveness, or her creating frames around her work so that it doesn't, her ideas just don't flow out and become a big delta. You know, and a woman can all the time do that, but she can also be vulnerable and soft and compassionate, and so we have access to it all. And I think this broadens our resources when we think like that and are aware of that. Then there's a dimension called authenticity. That there's something there's something unique about all of us, and now is the time to be that piece of the puzzle that's missing. You know, in a big puzzle, if there's 1,000 pieces, you know, just one missing is actually ruining the picture, right? So you have to find out what is yours and put it there. So that's being authentic and listening to your heart. I think that's the new GPS for the new era. It's the heart, not the head. And then there's proactivity. So now that you know all this, you have all these resources, you know how to balance your foundation, what are you going to do with it? So be proactive. Go and take an initiative that will lead others. And then how are you going to do that? So it's so easy to sit on the stands and talk about what other people should do. But now that you're in the court, it's about walking your talk. So now let us see you demonstrate living your values. And I think that integrity is a really, really huge new thing to be aware of, because we live in a very transparent world. So if you don't do what you say, it's very obvious. And I think that the clients can smell it. So integrity, I always tell my entrepreneurial students, eat your own medicine. What do you recommend to your students? Do it yourself. Because that's the most powerful shining example. That's how you become a lighthouse. So then how are you going to navigate? Well, we live in a time with information overload. It's very, very difficult to find your way. You know, just in your own field, 10 new reports are coming out every single day. So you need a different navigational tool. And that's why I train people in using their intuition so that they can distinguish what's what, and what is information and what is inspiration. And what is inspiration in alignment with what wants to happen. So leading from the future. And then finally, the final dimension is totality, to have wholeness. So that's about using all of yourself, having wholeness in your life so that you don't, for example, the old way of being an entrepreneur is that you work 80 hours a week at the detriment of your family. I think that's the old-fashioned way. I think especially as women, it doesn't work for our hormonal system, and it makes us unhappy of what we missed in our family lives. So I think the new way is to create synergy between work and life. So you are the same at work and at home, and you make things work together so that it actually makes you more creative and less stressed. And then you work for the whole. I think that the new way of leading and being an entrepreneur is to serve the whole. So how can you contribute to the whole? The old way was like, I do my thing, I earn my money, but it doesn't matter if I ruin the environment or am unethical. That doesn't work anymore. You need to serve the whole, and everybody's needed in that. We're all in the same boat. It's about to go down, so everybody needs to grab whatever they can and help us get to an upgrade for humanity.
So what do you see happening? Because you say this is an opportunity. What is your hope that happens?
I hope it will make us learn from the past. So the old business as usual has halted. So let's look back and say, what about business as usual didn't work? What don't we want to take into the future? So for example, an overload of stress, an overload of really creating success at the detriment of our health, of our families, of our relationships, or maybe not acting on our dreams. That could also be something we look back and say, I didn't act on my dreams, or I didn't really fully go for it. I was too afraid. Should I really put that into the future? Or maybe it could be, if we talk entrepreneurship, I never dared investing in myself. I always thought, well, mañana, but maybe, now it's the time to take yourself seriously, because you are needed in the new. So we need to look back and say what didn't work in the old, and for sure what didn't work was that with that we thought in terms of separation, that we didn't think in terms of wholeness. So everybody did their own thing, but didn't really look at how it affected the whole. And we need to look at that now, because we have seen we're all in the same boat. One little virus in China on a market, and the whole world is, half of the population of the world is now at home.
Well, it also happened because of lack of leadership. Because there were people who detected the virus, but they didn't step up to share that information. Like you said, transparency and authenticity has partly, the lack of transparency and lack of authenticity and lack of leadership has caused this.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, so we need to learn from that as well and say, wow, this lack of integrity, like not telling the truth, not warning other people, and not caring enough about other people, being ashamed about what happened and not sharing it, that doesn't work, because that can really be so harmful to so many people and lead to so many more deaths. So learning from the past and then evaluating what do we want to bring into the future. And we know that we have 10 years to accomplish the 17 world goals. So now it's an opportunity to adjust our businesses and our lives so that we can actually accomplish that goal. And a pause is excellent for that. A pause is a time for reflection. So we see a lot of good things coming out of it already, that we see, well, it's actually possible to work from home and be more with your family without it really being a big problem. We actually save a lot of money in flight expenses. We can actually accomplish a lot online. That's great for the online entrepreneurs, because they've been training all along to do this.
Yeah. It's the best time to be an online entrepreneur right now, but it's also a time to really step up for those who haven't. Myself, I would say, yes, I was stepping up before, but somehow this crisis has actually brought more leadership in me personally forward, doing things that I didn't do before in my business. So yeah, I think it's a chance for everyone to show their true colors, because everyone can be a leader.
Absolutely, yeah. And I feel that we are all urged to serve. So we see a huge, I usually say the future just suddenly became more feminine. Because people are reaching out, they're offering, they're serving, they're thinking, how can I help? And that is a beautiful attitude in the world. How can I help? Because the more you give, the more you receive. It's a natural law. You feel like giving something to people who are generous. So it's a very good attitude for entrepreneurs as well. And we are seeing a lot of new connections, people reaching out, people sort of voting for the light and bringing out uplifting messages and meditating together and sending love to the earth and sending love to all the ill ones. And we're suddenly seeing a huge global community acting together. And we didn't see that before. We lived in separate units where Denmark took care of itself, England took care of itself. We were separate, and everybody took mostly care of themselves. But now we see a more collective, and the fact that you and I are sitting here and have a conversation is part of that. Jennifer said, "Can you help?" Yeah, of course. It's a wonderful thing to help. It's a wonderful thing to contribute and interact and collaborate. And I think we will see that much, much more now, because we've seen, wow, we live in a global village, and if we help each other, it's a much more pleasant place to live for all.
That is a beautiful last sentence, Kirsten, of a wonderful conversation about leadership. What is the best way for people to find out more about you and your programs and your book?
Well, it's difficult to remember my name, right? KirstenStendevad.com. So I've actually created a free little series called the crisiswindow.com. And that's where I teach people how to make the most of this crisis. I give people the best tips and tricks that I used. And also I interviewed a lot of inspiring people who, they're among them entrepreneurs, who talk about a new way of leading businesses and what we can learn. So I put together like this little series, and that's my service. in this era to how we can go from crisis to quantum leap, because I think we have an amazing opportunity right now that we really should use.
Yeah.
So
Beautiful.
the crisiswindow.com is easy to remember, hopefully.
Yeah, we'll of course link that all up in the show notes that people can just click on there. So Kirsten, thank you so much for coming on the show today. This will not be the last one. I know we'll stay in touch. I talk to you again very soon.
Thank you so much. I loved being here, and thank you for your amazing work and your leadership in the world. I so appreciate it.